Okay, we will go ahead and get started. As people if people continue to arrive, we'll get them admitted. Thank you for joining us for our first BOC new employee orientation. We are have you. We're excited to roll this out. This will be just a high-level introduction to some of the things that, as a new employee to UCANR, that you would be utilizing while you're with BOC and with ANR. So we hope you'll enjoy it. We will supply you with some resources that we'll email out to you along with a copy of this presentation. Next slide. So these are the topics that we're going to go over today. Again, like I said, this will be high level. We'll be doing some introduction to each of these things, just to give you kind of an introduction to some of the things that you'll need access to and that you'll see and learn about. We're hoping this will help you start your career with ANR and make things a little bit easier. We will let you have an opportunity for some questions and answers at the end. Next slide. Again, we will have a session at the end for question and answers. There is a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, so you're more than welcome to put some question and answers there, and we'll answer those questions first. But then if there's time, we'll also take live questions. Next slide. This is the current org chart for the BOC. So the BOC is set up into teams. We have teams 1 through 6. And so you can see who each team belongs to. Teams 1, 2 report to Kathy Hankey. Teams 3 and 4 report to Janine Iorga. And teams 5 and 6 report to Janelle Wood. And then I'm the associate director, and Brandon Wood reports directly to me, and he oversees our merchant services. He also helps, he's new into this position, so he's still learning, but he'll also be backing up Rosemary Renteria, who's our senior financial analyst. And then he also works with me on special projects. And so that is how the BOC is laid out. And then we have Elizabeth Bizark, who is our customer service and project analyst. She is totally supportive and helps us 100% with doing things like this, as well as keeping up our website and doing all of our events and those kinds of things. We totally couldn't live without her. And then Sulin is our director. And then BOC reports to Tu Tran. Next slide. So this is a map of California, and you can see here where each of the counties lie and then which team they report to. So each team is laid out, and then team 5 is our one administrative team, and so they manage the financial support of our administrative services here in the 2nd Street building and some of our administrative services out of the Oakland offices. Team 6 is our one hybrid unit. They help support some of the administrative services as well as counties. And so this map kind of tells you which teams have which counties. Next slide. Okay, and so we're going to roll it out with payroll and Anne-Marie Scott, who is our director of payroll.
Hello, everybody. I would like to introduce myself. I'd like to start this by introducing myself. I'm sorry, are you able to see me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. I can't see myself, which is actually great. So I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Anne-Marie Scott, the director of payroll for UCANR. And I'd like to introduce you. I know that some of you are not super brand new, but it's always nice to get a reintroduction, as well as for those who are brand new. I'd like to introduce our team. This is the UCANR payroll team, and we are comprised of 4 individuals. I'm the director, Anne-Marie Scott. We have our senior analyst is Letty Barba. Our junior analyst is Darrell Chand, and our primary payroll transactor is Raj Dinza. And on the next few slides, I'm going to be going over the services that we can provide. But the one thing that I would like to have you take away is that any questions you have, you can reach us, all four of us are, you can reach any of us at the ANR Payroll at ucanr.edu email. We are part of the controller's office, so we are not technically under the BOC, but we work very closely with the BOC on a lot of uh, different actions. And we are the payroll team for the BOC and all the BOC's clients as well. So you can go to the next slide. Okay, and what is our mission? So we are a small team, but we have our team mission. We strive to provide excellent customer service to all our UCA and our employees. And so that means that um, no matter the title, whether they are academic or staff, um, we are there to provide service. And we can also help if an employee has come to you for questions, you can also have them, you can refer them to us as well. We're here to help support you to understand your pay and to answer any questions you have. And there it's amazing what I've seen throughout my career, the different things that people have uh, needed help explaining, because this is not your day job. Your day job is not to understand all the ins and outs of your pay. um, but we can help you understand the pay and the questions you have. And we also our primary mission is to ensure accurate and timely pay for all UCA and our employees, and that's our goal. It's never perfect, but we try really hard every pay cycle to make it perfect. All right, you can go to the next. Okay, and these are the ways in which we can help. Um, and I've laid these out. This is not everything, but I've laid these out so that people will realize or know that we are here to help you. You don't need to reach out to UC Path directly. You don't need to reach out to UC Davis. We are here. We are your payroll unit. So if there's a question about where your paycheck might be, you want to reach out to us at that email, that ANR Payroll at ucanr.edu. We can help track it down. If you think you didn't get paid, reach out to us. Or you're not able to enter time on your timesheet. In the timekeeping system we have, we refer to it as TRS. It is maintained by UC Davis, but our team here at the payroll unit at ANR, we manage our own units within that. So if there's any trouble that you have encountered, or anybody you're working with has encountered trouble with TRS, give us a call first, and we'll troubleshoot and get it resolved for you. If you need to adjust the hours on your timesheet, or if someone that you supervise needs to adjust the hours on the timesheet, contact us and we'll assist you with returning the timesheet for adjustment, and or other steps that might be required depending on how long of a time it has lapsed since the initial timesheet submission. If you have questions about how your net pay was calculated, um, we'll go through the calculations with you. We will not be able to give advice as to um, any changes you might make, but we can help explain how the net pay was calculated. And it can be rather confusing with individuals, especially with the new year and the new benefit rates. If you need to have your employment verified, there is a process for that through the UC Path system, um, and we can help guide you to that process. So if you or somebody that you work with needs help with getting proof of employment and or um, verification of wages, that again, that is through UC Path, but we can help get you or that person to the right spot, because it is a little bit confusing. If you need to update your tax withholding, again, that's not something that we technically do for you. We don't go into the system and update your tax withholding, but we can show you how to do it, and we can show you where to make those changes. Again, we can't advise you as to what the tax withholding you should be claiming, but we can help show you how to get there. And if you have questions about your W-2, you can contact us as well. And actually me specifically, and I can help you with how the W-2 was compiled and the amounts that were reported. Um, again, can't advise if there was a question about whether you had the right amount of withholding throughout the year, but I can help you understand the numbers. And then lastly, questions about your vacation or sick accruals. We can help review your accruals and confirm accuracy. And if there are inaccuracies identified, we can help resolve that, because that would involve us working directly with the UC Path Center. So can we go to the next slide? Okay, and so this is just our TRS resources. So again, TRS is the time reporting system. It's where we go in, it's where every employee goes in and reports their time, and the supervisors approve their time. So that's what TRS is. Who uses TRS? All UCANR monthly and biweekly paid employees use TRS. So if you're a county employee not paid by UC, you would not be using TRS. But if you are a UC employee working for UCANR, you would be using TRS. I have the link as to where to access TRS. And then there are deadlines as to when the timesheets need to be submitted and approved. And so when I have that linked to the deadlines. Um, again, these links are going to UC Davis because, as I said before, UC Davis technically manages the system, but our team, the ANR payroll team, we manage our population within TRS. And lastly, how? So you might have questions about either as for yourself or for someone you work with, biweekly employee or a monthly employee. These are links to the tutorials that UC Davis has provided. Okay, can we go to the next slide? And then these will be provided to you within the resources, but these are very helpful also. So there is a biweekly payroll calendar and there's a monthly payroll calendar. And so the 2025 biweekly payroll calendar,
yeah, I got it.
Goes ahead and shows you the pay period end dates and therefore the pay period begin dates, the different pay days, the days that vacations are accrued. So for the biweekly timesheets, they're submitted every 2 weeks with the payday falling on the second Wednesday after the end of the pay period. And timesheets must be submitted for the employee to be paid. The monthly timesheets are submitted in arrears during the first week of the following month. So timesheets are used to report just vacation, sick leave, and jury. Monthly salary is paid automatically on the first day of the following month. In other words, June salary is paid on July 1st, 2025, regardless of whether a timesheet is submitted. That doesn't mean that the timesheet doesn't need to be submitted, but it does need to, the monthly salary person will be paid regardless. So again, the most useful things about these calendars is it does show the paydays, and that's a question that a lot of folks have. So these will be available in our resources. And then can we go to the next slide? Oh, that's the end of my presentation. So if you have any questions, please reach out to us at ANR Payroll at ucanr.edu, or you can reach me directly at ascott, ASCOTT, at ucanr.edu. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
And welcome to the wonderful world of COGNOS. Next slide, please. So the first thing that we want to do is make sure that everybody has access to COGNOS that needs it. If you need access to COGNOS, please contact your BOC partner email. COGNOS gives us access to run reports for salary. We used to call it a 339 report. Some people still do. You can run reports for boundary cross systems and glide reports. So let's go ahead and click into accessing COGNOS. Next slide, please. So when you open up COGNOS, the first thing it's going to show you, at least this way mine is set up, is it shows you results for IBM COGNOS Analytics with Watson. The first two tabs that show up are actually salary systems. We used to call them 339 reports, and they are either for your individual, so your individual salary, you can look up, Brandon Wood, employee ID, and my salary come up, or you can come up per project. You could say, okay, I know that this particular PI or me in particular, I'm paid out of this account and this account, KLO 7331234, and I'm also being paid out of KLO 733456778. So that's the way to look it up per project. Next slide, please. So there's a couple different ways that we're using these 339 reports. I call it the before times and the after times. So historical data is for salary that was before the transfer into the new Oracle system on 1/1/24. So if you need any salary information that was before the transfer into Aggie Enterprise, you're going to use the one right on top that says report historical. And if you're going to use anything from 1/20 or 1/1/24 on, you can just use the distribution of payroll expense report. Next slide, please. So the way to access more information is you can see on the top left-hand corner, you see people call it the paper, they call it the hamburger. For me, it depends on if it's close to lunch or not. If it's close to lunch, it's always the hamburger for me. So you click on that right there. Thank you very much. And it will access home, content, or recent. If you click the home button on the top left, it'll go ahead and you'll have multiple options that you can do. Please, next slide. So for me, myself, I have the 339 reports, I have a glide report, I have an AggieExpense report lookup, and the historical data. So the glide report gives you access to all the boundary system costs that are charged in your accounts, and the AAE 419 gives you access to specific AggieExpense reports. Next slide, please. So the way to search for COGNOS reports and glide, what you're going to really want to do is focus on right here. It's the second one drop down. It says journal source required. I always just type in UCD Concours. I hit search. And what I like to do is I like to highlight everything to make sure that I get everything and all the costs that are done. So what I do is I click select all. It's blue and it's down at the bottom. Once you do that, it grays out everything on the left. And just like everything with Aggie Enterprise right now, you then have to move it into the next quadrant. So you click insert, everything will then auto-populate to the right, and then you can do your search. I always choose all UCD costs. That is the best and most effective way to do it. Next slide, please. And then what I like to do is I like to search by PPM project. You can go ahead and you can use, if it's a new account, it's the KLO number. right? This example here is KLO 733SD01. You click search. Again, it'll show on the results. Then you have to click it, insert it, and move it to the right side, and then you can search for it. There's other ways that you can search too, like I said before, like if you're doing a 339 report and you want to do salary, you can search for people's names. But when you're doing a glide report, it's important to do the project. That's going to give you the most information, and that's the best practice. Then you go ahead and you can go to the bottom. As long as everything that has a star is filled out, you can click search. And that's when then your final report's going to pop up. Next page, please. And that's when it's going to come up here. It's going to say, well, how do you want to run this report? You can run it through Hotmail, PDF, run Excel, CSV, XML, but the best way to do it is to run Excel data. If you run Excel data, it's going to give you the most information possible, and it's going to give you the ability to manipulate it in Excel any way that you want to. So best practice again is to run Excel data. You click run Excel data. Next slide, please. And this is going to be your report. Once you go here, you can go ahead and set filters. You can do sums. You can use Excel any way that you want to manipulate the report to get the results that you want. And that's your data right there. And that is the COGNOS Glide report. Like I said before, if you have any questions, please save them for the end or send them into the Q&A at the bottom. And we'll go over that at the end. But thank you very much for your introduction to the COGNOS report.
Right. Today we're going to be discussing a high-level overview of AggieExpense. We're going to be discussing your AggieExpense profile and banking information and the driver safety LMS training. And then please next.
Sorry about that. There we go.
Okay. So on your screen here, you are seeing the expense dashboard. Keep in mind your view may be a little bit different depending on your job role. Next, please. So the first thing that you're going to want to do when you get access to AggieExpense is complete your profile. From your dashboard, you're going to go to your icon. In this case, it will be your initials, and you go to your profile settings. Under your expense settings, as you see on the left column of the right-hand picture, you go there, and this is where you'll enter your information. Next, please. Your profile will include your banking information, your personal information, and where you can also set up what are called expense delegates. So if you set up your personal information and your banking information for our purposes, your default reimbursement method will be direct deposit when you have your banking information entered. If for some reason you do not have your direct deposit information set up, you will also want to include your personal address, because if an error occurs, reimbursement paper checks will be mailed to the address you have on file. It is also important to note that if neither section is completed before you try to submit your first report, you will receive an error message when you're trying to submit the report, and you'll be required to complete this information. And please, next slide. So for your banking information, it's important to note employees maintain their own direct deposit banking information. Another employee that you may have set up as a delegate cannot act as your delegate in this case for accessing or viewing this information. Only the employee who is logged into AggieExpense can see, enter, and or modify the banking information. It's also important to note you may use a different bank account for expense reimbursements versus the one you have for your payroll. Also, critical to note that if you are set up as a non-employee traveler, you are not able to get direct deposit. Direct deposit is not available for those non-employee travelers, nor is it available for cash advance requests. Okay, next slide, please. On this screen, now you'll see the platform to have your AggieExpense delegates set up. It's important to set up delegates for others to have access to your expense report and or approvals. In many cases, if you are a PI, your office manager, your supervisor, and or your county director could be listed as your delegates. This will allow them to help you, to assist you in reconciling your expenses. As you see on your screen, Veronica and Kathy are listed as delegates for the user who created these screenshots, can prepare, can view receipts, receives emails, and can approve. So the delegate here can approve reports for these people. And for can use reporting, it's also important to note that there is a limit of 2 delegates for the one that is highlighted on your screen. If you do mark the receives emails, your delegate will receive all email notifications for any approvals or submissions that are ready to be made. Next slide, please. For your personal car, you'll need to get a personal car set up. The reason for this is because to be eligible for mileage reimbursements, you'll need to have at least one vehicle listed here. The vehicle ID in this case will be how you want to identify your vehicle. In my case, I have a Toyota Prius, so I use my Prius as my vehicle ID, and that is also listed as my preferred car because that is my vehicle. If you were to have multiple vehicles at your disposal, you could list both of them here, and then you could list one of those as preferred. You only need to check one preferred if you do have the more than one vehicle. Next slide, please. Okay, this is also information on your personal profile tab. The information that you can see here, it is important to note that you can enter your home, your work address, your contact information, any alternate email addresses, including your UC ANR or UC Davis, and then an emergency contact in the case you were traveling, this person could be contacted. So please next. Thank you so much for your time today.
Good morning. Okay, so your purchasing card and travel card should you need to get one. Next slide. So purchasing card and travel card, you're going to apply through AggieExpense. You will do that under the company notes section in AggieExpense. The link below is a knowledge base article that's been written by Davis, and it gives you the complete instructions, although we'll go over kind of a brief overview here. So when you go into AggieExpense, there will be a section under that company notes. It'll look similar to this little section down here that says cardholder agreements and trainings. And you do need to do the training and the agreement prior to doing that actual application process. So you can click on these links and complete both those trainings and agreements. And you do need to complete both if you are going to be applying for the travel card and the P card. Next screen. Once you do the training, you're going to go into the UC Learning Center, which is the LMS system. When you go in, it's going to ask you which location you are from. Even though we are ANR and there will be an ANR option, please choose UC Davis because we are utilizing their LMS. You do need to choose UC Davis. And so then it'll take you into a screen that looks very similar to this, and you're going to do your required trainings and take the travel card and or P card training. Next screen. After you complete those trainings, you will want to save the certificates that you receive at the end of those trainings because you will need to attach them to your application in AggieExpense. So you'll click on the request in the header section and create a new request. You'll choose the card program. The request date will be today's date. The employee ID is going to auto-populate in AggieExpense because you're in your AggieExpense file. You'll give the request a name that fits the action requested. So, for example, you would say new travel card for Connie cardholder. Card type, you're going to choose the desired card type that you're trying to apply for. And then select the action requested, which is card application, and then enter the business reason why you need the card. click the request button and then the add button to select the type of card and action. So travel, new card. Next screen. So this is what it looks like. So you're going to request, and then it's going to come in, and you're applying for either a corporate travel card or a P card, and you're going to create a new request. You do need to fill out any of the items that have the red asterisk. Once you do that, then you're going to create the new request here at the bottom. Next slide. So then you're with the things with the asterisk, you would fill those out. We'll go in the next slide. We'll get into your chart of account information, entering your delegation amounts. There'll be more information on that as well in the next slide. Ensure you've read that cardholder agreement to make sure that you agree to all the things that you're going to be held accountable for when you take that card on. You're going to, again, attach that UC Learning Center certificate training that you received after you completed the training. Your request is going to route to your financial department approver, which is your BOC BP team person. And then it will then route to supply chain management's banking card services for processing. So that's the Davis's card programming team. Once the card is processed, you'll receive a copy of the U.S. Bank cardholder agreement and a copy of the cardholder agreement with information that you've agreed to. Once all the approvals have completed, it usually takes about 10 to 14 business days to get your card. Next screen. So this is where we get to your chart of accounts. So when you apply for a P card and a travel card, you're going to choose a GL as your chart of account. Your entity is always 3310. Your fund is 13U20. And then you're going to enter your financial department for your financial department. And then all other segments are left blank. For travel card, it's going to default with the approved default amounts. And you could just leave that. You don't need to touch it. For P cards, it's also going to default with pre-approved amounts. If your job is not one of these four, you can leave it as is. Otherwise, you need to update to these amounts. Once you hit submit, your BP is going to review. If you're one of these four titles and you did not update it, we can't update for you. The only thing we cannot do is update your chart of accounts. So if you don't put in the accurate chart of accounts, we will have to submit it, reject it, and send it back to you for corrections. So so that you put in the correct chart of accounts. So please make sure you put in your correct chart of accounts. If you're not sure, you can always check with your BP in your BOC team for this account again. Next screen. So just a few things. Allowable purchases on your P card, published materials, office furniture up to $500. You can pay regulated utility payments, which would be like your electricity, water, sewer, cell phone. Conference registration can be paid on here if there's no other travel involved. Memberships, but there is a membership form that needs to be attached. Food, if it's not for catering or entertainment, and repairs, as long as we have a valid completed purchase order or purchase agreement. Next slide. Non-allowable, no capital assets. You can't split purchases to stay under approved amounts or to circumvent policy. No food that's related to entertainment or travel. Repairs that we don't have an agreement or purchase order already filled out. No travel or parking or entertainment expenses. No software unless we already have a purchase order or agreement in place. No rental items, again, unless we have a purchase order or agreement in place. No purchases on eBay where we can't identify the purchase, the payee. No personal purchases, and shipping we should be using Aggie Ship. Next slide. For the travel card, you should be using it for lodging, airfare, car rentals, entertainment expenses, which include your meals, food for catering, and entertainment events. When we say meals and incidentals, incidentals would be your tips. Conference registration where travel is involved. You can also use it for conference registration where there's no other travel as well. Please remember, you should always attach itemized receipts. It is best practice that even though receipts that are under $75 for things like meals are not required, it is best practice that you should still attach them, especially if you're using award funds, so that if there's an award audit, your receipts are attached and we have access to those. Unallowable purchase is our non-travel and entertainment related expenses. Next slide. So one of the things for P card is you are responsible when you are using a P card to always attach an itemized receipt or invoice. The other thing is you need to itemize out your sales tax. And so you either need to fill out that sales tax paid to merchant box or mark if it's tax and a tax exempt purchase. If you purchase something and the vendor did not charge a sales tax, then you leave both of those blank. And then the system will go ahead and pay the California state tax directly to the state of California. If the item is tax exempt and you mark that, you're required to put a comment in the comment box of why is it tax exempt. If you're doing a refund, if you've received a refund, then that sale amount of paid to merchant should be a negative number. If you've purchased out of state and we weren't charged sales tax because we purchased from an out of state vendor and they don't collect California sales tax, it's a best practice to add a comment in your Aggie expense document to state that you purchased from an out of state vendor that does not collect sales tax for California. And the reason for that is when your BOC team is going through the hundreds of P card transactions that they get, that way they don't send it back to you thinking that you've missed filling out your sales tax buttons and asking you to correct it. Because what will happen is we will still collect the sales tax from you, or the system will collect the sales tax from you and pay it directly to the state of California. And if you've noted it's an out-of-state vendor that doesn't collect California state sales tax, we know that that's why you've left one of those two boxes blank. Next slide. Thank you.
All right, so in this next section, we're just going to be going over a little bit about Aggie Enterprise and some of the different purchasing processes. And we can go to the next slide. So we're going to be talking about setting up your requisition preferences, requesting a purchase order, how to use the punch-out system, non-PO check requests, how to look some things up in Aggie Enterprise, and also new supplier setup. Next slide. All right, so setting up your requisition preferences, this is something you're going to want to do before you start any purchasing process in Aggie Enterprise, especially using the punch-out catalog, which is generally the preferred method for purchasing. So you'll go to your home page. Hopefully you have all the permissions, have logged in, and this is what your home page looks like. First, you're just going to select that cart that says procurement. Once you click on that, some smaller tiles will pop up under it, and you're going to click on purchase requisitions. And then that's going to take you to the screen and the picture on the bottom. You'll go to that more tasks drop-down menu and select update requisition preferences. Next slide. So once you've selected that, this is what is going to come up. The first thing you're going to want to do is select the requisitioning BU. I think that stands for business unit. Check that drop down, and you want to make sure you're selecting UCD REQ business unit. And then for shipping and delivery, it should automatically have your name in there, and deliver to location should be internal. And then the deliver to type should be internal. And then the deliver to location should be your work office address. You can begin typing your work office address in that box. And as you're typing it, it should auto-populate from a drop-down, and you can select your address. If you're doing this process and either your work address is not in there, or it is in there, but something's wrong, or it needs to say fourth floor or something like that. If something's not right, please just reach out to your business partner team so we can help send a ticket into the Aggie Enterprise team to get your address either added or updated. And then next slide, I think I'm going to hand it over to Erin to get into a little bit more specifics about purchasing.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Erin Musil. I'm the Financial Service Analyst on Team 5, which we also refer to as the business partner. Just want to clarify that. So go over a couple different ways when you're wanting to purchase something. The first one would be when you have to email the documents to your BOC team. And this would be in order for us, we'll submit it for you to get a purchase order to use. So to request the purchase order, you're going to email the documents to your assigned team inbox, and both and the team's always checking that. And then because it's more high level, I'm not going over all the forms, but I want to go over some of the main things you're going to want to include. And then as you get more familiar with different purchases, you'll kind of start seeing some more forms that might be needed, but definitely a purchase request form, and I'll go over that in the next slide. Supplier documentation, if they're not active yet, it could take about 2 weeks to get them active, so keep that in mind. We do have a section a little bit on what will be needed to be submitted, but you'll be submitting documents to the BOC team to get a new supplier registered to be able to work with them. Always include the quote or the statement of work that's going to be done on that PO. And then for terms of use, you're going to submit that if there's any rental or software, especially, there's always going to be some sort of terms to agree to when you're renting equipment, chairs, anything, as well as using any software, plugins, apps, all that. And we don't have any authority to agree to anything on behalf of UC ANR. We have to send that to the procurement department. At UC Davis, the buyer will review any terms and get that in place. So then you're safe to move forward with that rental or software and use that PO. A couple things. If your invoice is being paid with the check, then we're going to make a PO for the amount of the purchase. So the first step is called, we create a requisition, and then that becomes a purchase order. And if the invoice is being paid with a card, like we mentioned before, it's okay to pay if you have the PO for services and rentals and all that, but you'd have to have that PO first. But in that case, we need to know so we can create the right kind of requisition to get a no-cost agreement. And that would be no-cost agreement review is the title of it. And that still creates a PO number, but that you're going to use when you're reconciling your AggieExpense report. And a couple slides back on the sales tax, there was the box there that shows where you put in the agreement PO number. It's going to be on that same screen. And then we'll know, oh, thank you. No, actually it's back quite a bit. Maybe I should it's okay. It's in the AggieExpense, but you're going to put it on there, and then we'll know, okay, that's linked to that PO, and we can look up the PO and check. So it kind of ties into this. So for non-restricted purchases under 10,000 that do not include any terms and conditions, do not need a PO. So in that case, you can just use your card, attach any backup documentation needed, but you don't have to have a PO unless it's one of those situations. And then big thing, of course, be sure the PO is open before the rental or purchase happens. That doesn't mean send the documents to the BOC inbox and then you're good. It does take a while for the PO number to be created, and then it's open. All right, next slide. Okay, so here's just an example of the purchase request form, and I'm showing this because it has a lot of the pieces that we need. So, vendor information, again, we'll look up to see if they're active. If they're not, we'll need to register them. But, if it's a sole proprietor that's being used, there's another form that's needed. Going down through, again, it asks about when's the event or when is the purchase happening. It does need to be in the future. If it's already happened or it's in the past, then it's actually an unauthorized purchase, and there's a process called confirming order, and Susan will go over that in a little bit. But just keep that in mind, plan ahead because it does have to be in the future. Paying the supplier by card, yes or no? So there's that important question of, you know, if you're paying it with a card, we're actually only going to open the PO for 1 penny because we don't want to have that money sitting there reserved if the card's being used to pay it. If it's being paid with a check, and so you say no to the card, then we'll have the PO for the amount, and then when we get the invoice, we'll request the check get sent. So I do sometimes see that one get missed or maybe not updated, so just be sure that that's accurate, or let us know in the email too, like I'm going to pay with a P card or something. Business purpose, that's very important to tie it back to, you know, business purpose, UCC and what we can put in the description of what your PO is. The amount and the items, you know, that's so we can set up the PO correctly, as well as, you know, based on the amount of the PO, there could be some other documents as well. Over 10,000 or higher price POs could have some additional documents needed. So we'll reach out if that's the case. And then the full chart string. So you want to fill in all the boxes, even if they're zeros, just so we have the full chart string you want to use. If it's in the general ledger or the PPM, we'll go over just a little bit more about that later on in the training, but be sure that's fully filled out, and then department or PI approval and your fiscal officer approval. So this is kind of a snapshot of all the stuff we were going to collect with the backup documentation to get a PO. All right, next slide. Okay, so moving on to punch out. So this is a great way that you can order stuff directly through Aggie Enterprise and doesn't have to go through any emails with the BOC. The punch out catalog allows you to shop directly on a supplier dedicated portal and then submit the order through Aggie Enterprise yourself. So each punch out catalog site has its own user interface and look and feel, as the punch out site is maintained by the individual supplier. But once you add it to the cart and move forward, you'll be in Aggie Enterprise requisition screen and submit it like any other one. Here's a list of suppliers. So Amazon's really huge. So always please use punch out with Amazon if you can instead of your P card. CDWG, that's a great site that for software that maybe you could just buy directly through punch out and save some of the, you know, extra documents needed. Dell, Granger, Office Depot, Waxy, all these are available to utilize. And then I think that's better. Next slide. All right, so yeah, I'll go over a little bit of the process. So in that procurement tile and then purchase requisition. So again, once you set up your preferences, you'll have access. Then you'll see these punch out icons, links, and you go to the supplier you want, and then, you know, add to the cart. Once you have the requisition, either you can attach approval from your department head, which would just be an email or something just saying, yeah, I approve the purchase, or there's a way to reassign it to your approver to submit in Aggie Enterprise. We'll have some instructions on that in the resources documents we're providing. It's a little more detail, but that's another way to show us that it's been approved. And then, because all it's going to do is then just route to the fiscal approval for fiscal approver. And then once that's done, it's just going to go to the supplier and get processed. So that's pretty quick in that way. All right, next slide. Okay, and last one I want to talk about is non-PO payment option, which would be also what we consider like a check request. And this would be if you need us to process a check being issued when there's not necessarily a PO needed. But you know, so a lot of these items on this list here, these are all things that don't need a PO. A lot of them can be used with the P card. Sometimes suppliers would prefer a check instead of using a credit card. And so we can do that too with a check request. One thing to keep in mind, for any check, any amount, the supplier does have to be set up in our system. So again, there's going to be that couple-week process, even if it's just for a small check for something. They do need to be an active supplier to receive a check. So popular ones we see a lot of honorariums for like maybe speakers or whatnot, or donations. Again, it's the same stuff, utilities, all that. This would just be using a check. And we do use, I think next slide, I'll show you the request. So WFA, this is an external site that we use, and Sulin is going to go over a little more about it in a little bit, but this is where you can submit a check request. And this would be where you submit the information, and then we all see the requests. And so the team that, is assigned that department will catch it and then request a check being cut to the supplier. All right, next slide. Okay, I'm just going to real quick kind of show you some helpful ways to use Aggie Enterprise to get some updates if you're curious and you want to look it up yourself. There's under procurement, you can look up suppliers to see if they're still active or one's already in there. Purchase orders, see if it's open or where it's at. Purchase agreements, like statewide or system-wide agreements, and then the requisition tile. So always, most of the screens in Aggie Enterprise, you'll always see off on the right-hand side that like piece of paper. I guess it is. It's the taskbar, or they're also maybe the magnifying glass. Those are both where you'll start to do your tasks and find out, like select what you want to do. The picture below is under purchase orders, and then you go to the taskbar and manage orders. And here you can look up by supplier, the purchase order number, the requisition number. Do remove the buyer. Sometimes it populates that and you don't want to have a buyer in there, but anything with the double asterisk, you just need one of those boxes filled out, and then you can search and see what the list. All right, next slide. All right, and same thing for invoices. If you go to payables and then invoices, same thing on the right-hand side, you'll see the taskbar, and then below shows an example of manage invoices task, where you can search invoice number, again, supplier, if you want to look up if something's been paid or cashed or whatnot. So yeah, I'm going to pass it back to Caitlin now, I believe, yep.
Yep. So I'm just going to quickly go over the new supplier setup and why you would want to set up a new supplier. So if you want to work with a supplier, you're not sure if they are already listed as a vendor in Aggie Enterprise, you can search for them. Excuse me, like Erin was kind of showing, some suppliers used to be back in our old system in KFS, didn't get ported over, so we need to register them as a supplier. So anytime either a business or an individual will need a check payment, or if we need to set up a purchase order or agreement review. Or if the supplier only accepts check, ACH, or wants to sign up for Payment Plus, these are going to be all the reasons that we would need to register a new supplier. And we can go to the next slide for the flow process. So the process for actual companies versus individuals is just a little bit different. We have a supplier questionnaire and checklist that we will ask that you fill out and send to us at the BOC. Not all of these documents are going to be applicable when we're filling them out. You can look at the questionnaire and tell, but we'll need the questionnaire, a W-9, and then sometimes we will need a certificate of insurance, proof of small business certification, or a conflict of interest form. You'll submit all of those documents to us at the BOC. We will go ahead and submit the supplier registration, and then the vendor desk at UC Davis will activate the supplier record for us. And this is a process that can take up to 2 weeks. Sometimes they're really fast, they'll get them done next day, but that does not always happen and we cannot guarantee it. So please do allow at least 2 weeks for a new supplier to be set up. And we can go to the next slide. So this is the process for individuals. We are going to want that questionnaire filled out and sent to us, but we do not want you to send us their W-9 because that is going to contain their social security number, and we want to be secure with that and not be downloading that, sending that via email. So you can send us the questionnaire, these other documents if they're needed. You'll submit those to us, and then what we will do is we'll initiate the supplier registration and then hit save for later. and then we email that link to the individual themselves so they can securely upload their W-9 to that supplier registration. They will then save it for later. We will receive that email at the BOC, and then we'll be able to submit that registration. Same deal is that this can take up to 2 weeks, but because we're asking that individual to upload their W-9, you know, everybody's busy, that, you know, that's just one thing that may take some additional time for them to do. So just allow an extra 1 or 2 weeks if we're setting up an individual in the system. And then on the next slide, I do have a link that will take you directly to the supplier checklist and questionnaire. It is also going to live in the resources section, which we'll send to you after this presentation. So that and the secure W-9 upload process, those documents are both in there for your reference. So you can save those and submit those to us anytime it is needed. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to walk us through WFA, which is our workflow automation system. Next slide, please. This system is an internal system created for ANR to help us track and manage certain workflows and forms. A number of units use the workflow automation system, and I'm just going to walk us through how to access and navigate, to know when to use the system, and here's the link to access the system on our website. Okay, next slide, please. A couple of tips to access WFA is to use our UC Davis login. It can be a little tricky to access WFA. So some things I've learned over time is to try different browsers, and certainly clear out your history settings for when you're trying to access WFA online. The different admin units that use WFA include HR, us at the BOC, the Contracts and Grants Unit, Risk and Safety Services, and IT has one process also listed, and the next slide will go over a few of these processes. Yeah, so HR's got, you know, the data change request, flexible work agreement. Contracts and Grants has a couple of their workflows going through WFA, as does Risk and Safety Services. And as I mentioned, IT has the one process that they are utilizing WFA for. But, you know, I'm going to actually go over the 3 BOC processes we use WFA for. So next slide, please. So as Aaron mentioned earlier, we have an unauthorized purchase process. So when a purchase has been made that doesn't quite follow policy, or it's missing some documentation or some earlier approvals, an unauthorized purchase request needs to be made through WFA. Aaron also mentioned when a check request is being requested, that also goes through our WFA process. And the third one is a funding change request, when we need to go ahead and change the funding source for someone's salary. So next slide, please. So the next couple of slides just kind of gives you a snip of the types of information that you'll need to fill out when going through the WFA processes for the 3 BOC workflows. This is an overview for the unauthorized purchase request. The next slide will talk a little bit about the check request process. Before I move from here, it's really great to identify that to the right-hand side. You can also sort of track and manage where your request is in process. So for this one, for example, you know, I just opened a screen to start inputting the data. So it's in the initiator view. Once the initiator submits it, it goes to the director, and then it goes to a financial approver, and then this one goes to the controller. So it's really nice to see that workflow laid out and to track and manage kind of where it is in process. Okay, next slide and next slide. So this is the overview slide for the funding change request. And next slide, please. And this gives you kind of a holistic view if you've made a number of submissions. So this is a dashboard view of the check requests. So if you've made a number of check requests, this is my dashboard view. I'll be able to see sort of the date of the submission, the task ID that's been assigned, what type of request it is, who submitted it, and the current stage and status, which is really great because, prior to having WFA, a lot of these processes were form-based or email-based, which means you had to get the form, fill it out, hand it to the next person.
See resources. So to give a high-level overview of BOC resources, we have some links on this slide for you. One will take you to the ANR employee welcome page. One will take you to ANR portal. And then you have links to Aggie Enterprise and AggieExpense, the systems we've gone over in this orientation. Our website, which I'll go over right now, BOC forms and where to find them on the website. And then our purchasing frequently asked questions as well. So first off, where to find the BOC website. Especially if you're new to UCANR, the easiest way to find it is just to Google UCANR Business Operations Center, and then just click that first link and then bookmark that for the next time you need to access our website. And then on our main page, you're going to find who we are, what we do, and then links in our list of services to the pages that correspond to those services. You'll be able to find more information about everything from account and fund management to the UCANR credit card machine program if you need it. You'll find our Business Operations Center organization chart, which we showed at the very beginning of this orientation, as well as a business partner directory. So if you remember the map that Tracy showed us earlier with all of the business partner team assignments for counties and statewide admin units, you'll find contacts for those business partner teams and the individuals on those teams. You'll also find a calendar of due dates and events. So if there's anything coming up like fiscal close deadlines, effort reporting deadlines, and things like that, or any of the offerings that the Business Operations Center puts on, like this orientation, you'll find that in our calendar linked on our main page as well. Another thing to note about our main page is you'll find our Ask button. If you're not sure whom to direct your question to, just go ahead and click that Ask button and it'll send it to bocsupport@ucanr.edu, and we'll be happy to route your question to the right person on our team. You'll also find BOC current topics. This is where we'll list job opportunities if you'd like to join our team, although you're just getting started with UCANR, so you have different roles. And then you'll also find any key updates like mileage and like mileage rate increases or decreases, and then upcoming events as well. And if you scroll down, you'll find all of our stuff. And then on the left-hand side, sorry, of the ANR website, you'll find the Business Operations Center. And then these are all of our menus. So we've organized it into account management, purchasing, travel, entertainment, and relocation, and then resources and programs. So you will find anything you need to know about our services on our menus. And since this is a high-level overview, I wanted to point out some things about the resources and programs page that'll be most useful. The first one is the ANR Policy and Procedure Manual. So if you want to look up purchasing policies, if you want to look up finance and business policies, you'll find that right here. You'll also find BOC forms and instructions. So if you need to fill out a statement of cash collections, COGNOS access request form, etc., you'll find that right here on our forms page, which is in the resources and programs menu under policies, procedures, and forms. You can download a frequently used forms overview. Caitlin mentioned the resources section of the box folder. So that's going to be in there as well, but you can find it on the forms page. And it'll go over which forms are most used and whom to submit them to. There's also an alphabetical navigation. So if you know that you're looking for declaration of missing receipts, you can just click on D and it'll scroll you right down to declaration of missing receipts, for example. And then another section that we just added to the resources and programs page is UCCE funding allocations, and we'll cover that later, but that's another thing that you'll find on there. And then this is more information about what I just covered. And then a quick note for downloadable fillable forms. If you look at the form in the browser, the signature field might not appear, but if you download it and then open it from your file explorer, then the signature field will appear. And then to note, we have office hours. They're drop in every second and fourth Thursday of every month from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. on Zoom. Anybody's welcome to come and join us. If you have a burning question for any of our, for anything, you can come and join for that. It's open to all ANR staff. And then another thing, if you're in the ANR portal, you'll see that BOC Collaborative Tools has a group for county directors and office managers, a group for office managers and support staff, admin staff, and then those are places that you can ask questions or share resources with other staff. And then if you have a suggestion for any groups that you'd like to be created within collaborative tools, you can let us know at bocsupport@ucanr.edu or by clicking our Ask button. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'll be presenting information on UCCE Advisor Support Funds. And this information that I'm going to be providing only pertains to those academic positions for those that were hired for an academic position of cooperative extension advisor. So what I'll be reviewing with you today is the centrally funded support funds of advisor support, advisor startup, and academic salary cost recovery, or ASCR for a short acronym that we use. Some people also call it salary savings or cost recovery. So you might hear it in those terms as well. Okay, for each of these funds, I will be going through the purpose of the funds, who is eligible, allocation amount, time frame and process, and allowable and unallowable uses for each of these funds. Next slide, please. Okay, so for advisor support, the purpose of these funds is to provide, these funds are provided to enhance the individual advisor's ability to carry out their job responsibilities, gain more knowledge or procure resources in like books or reference materials and software, professional development, travel, field visits, or clientele meetings. Eligibility for these funds, they need to be essentially funded cooperative extension advisor. And some are excluded because they're grant funded, or there are some advisors that are also research extension center directors, so they are excluded from these funds as well. The allocation amount is $2,000 per advisor. For this fiscal year only, these advisors will be receiving an additional $2,000. The time frame for these funds, it's 1 year on a fiscal year basis, no extensions. So they need to use these funds within the current fiscal year. Okay, and what's the process for these funds? Resource Planning and Management, RPM, will allocate funding to each advisor's general ledger project within their financial department. Funds will be available at the start of the fiscal year, typically July or August. BOC will work with RPM to fund any new advisors that are hired during the fiscal year. New advisors hired from July through March will receive full amount of the allocation. Advisors hired in April and May will only receive a prorated allocation. It's about like a 50% allocation, so they'll receive $1,000. And then any new advisors hired in June will not receive funding for the current fiscal year. Okay, so sample Aggie Enterprise chart string is listed here. So the 310 is the entity. These are federal funds. The 21050 is federal fund source. And then you have your financial department for the advisor. And then you would use the natural account of whatever expense you are using the chart string for. 62 is always the purpose. And then the advisor's program code. So like on this chart string here, it's PPS. So that designates like their discipline or expertise. So the PPS stands for plant production systems. So any of those advisors that are hired for that discipline would have this PPS program code. And then they would use their GL project. So each advisor has their unique GL assigned to them. And with this example here, this is an advisor from Alameda. So that's what the GL alum. And then the last 4 digits are just a random 4 digits assigned to for their GL project. And then the activity code for the annual $2,000 is 200538. I think it's program support. So for this year, like I mentioned, all the advisors will be receiving an additional $2,000. And so there's going to be a different chart string that they'll need to use. So the fund source is different. So it's 19976 funds. Then they would use their financial department of the advisor and the advisor's unique GL project, but no program code will be used for this year's additional 2,000. And then there's a different activity code. So the activity code is 900173. And you might hear your colleagues refer to these funds as PDSL, program support funds. That's what they were formerly known as. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, allowable and unallowable uses for advisor support. Allowable uses is travel and registration expenses for professional meetings and conferences, travel for field visits or meetings with clientele, prepayment of registration or transportation expenses for conferences occurring in July, August, September in the next fiscal year. And I just want to make a point on these prepayment expenses, that these expenses need to hit the current fiscal year ledgers. So if you're going to do a prepayment for something you're like a conference or something you're going to attend in July, August, September, you should have do the payment, I would say no later than May, so that you ensure that you get your travel report in and the expenses hit no later than the June ledger. Okay, and then another allowable expense for advisor support is safety equipment or attire, which includes protective gear such as boots or coveralls. Logo wear when the purpose is to identify personnel as part of a UCCE program. Membership fees to professional societies. State certifications or license fees only if required in the employee's position description. And they can use these funds for computers, printers, cameras, or electronic devices, and also for program support supplies and resources. Okay, so unallowable uses for advisor support. No international travel expenses or registration fees. No entertainment route meal expenses. No facility related improvement expenses like constructions or repairs, maintenance or decoration. No furniture. No personal items. No recognition gifts for employees, volunteers, or clientele. And no honoraria, consulting fees for independent contractors. And no employee salary expenses. And no vehicle maintenance expenses for county-owned or UC leased vehicles. Okay, next slide. Okay, for advisor startup funds. The purpose of these funds are to support the development of an advisor's UCCE program and to purchase their initial technology needs and office supplies. Conducting the needs assessment is also a crucial component of the advisor in understanding their job responsibilities and determining the focus for their position. So who's eligible? Are newly hired centrally funded CE advisors. The allocation amount is $10,000. The time frame for these funds allocation is usually completed within the first month of hire. Funds available for up to 3 fiscal years. And any remaining balances are returned to ANR effective June 30 of the expiring year. Extension requires a budget proposal and formal approval. And they are not typically ongoing, so the extension request may or may not be approved. Okay, what's the process? A welcome letter will be emailed to newly hired CE advisor within 2 weeks of hire date with allocation amount and chart of accounts, chart string to use for their funding. BOC will request allocation from RPM within 2 weeks of hire date to be processed. RPM will allocate funds to advisor's GL project and should be complete within first month of hire date. So here's the sample Aggie Enterprise chart string. So again, the entity is 3310 for ANR. These funds are general state funds, so it's 19978. And the advisor would use their financial department and the natural account of whatever expense they're using the funds for. 62 is the purpose. No program code, so just a default program code is what you would use. And then the advisor's GL project. And the activity is 2020-12. I think it's faculty startup is the description of that activity code. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, allowable and unallowable uses for advisor startup funds. Allowable uses is to purchase new computer, software, and or research and extension equipment, furniture, fund startup research costs, support training and or professional development activities, so registration fees or purchase of resource materials or travel expenses, support travel expenses associated with advisor CE program. Unallowable uses for advisor startup funds. No international travel expenses or registration fees to international conferences. No personal items. No recognition gifts for employees, volunteers, or clientele. No employee morale functions. And then here's a link here that you can go to that lists more unallowable or restrictions on some travel expenses. Okay, next slide. Okay, academic salary cost recovery, or ASCR for short. The purpose, these funds provides an opportunity for advisors to use centrally provided funding for research and or program costs when contract and grant salary benefits replaces state salary and benefits. A proportion of the recovered state salary is returned to the advisor for research program support. ASCR must be planned at the award proposal stage and approved by ANR Office of Contracts and Grants, or OCG for short. Okay, who's eligible for academic salary cost recovery? Is centrally funded cooperative extension advisors. Allocation amount would depend on the percent of the advisor's effort that's being charged to the grant. Advisor recovers the salary savings, but not the benefit. Benefit savings remain with UCCE. Okay, it's time frame for these funds. Allocations are processed up to 3 times during the fiscal year after salary has posted to the award account. Salary savings funds are available for advisor to use for up to 2 years. Okay, and what's the process for this? When submitting a grant proposal to ANR's OCG, the principal investigator will need to request academic salary cost recovery. If the grant project is awarded, OCG will indicate on the good news letter or GNL award letter that ACR is approved. OCG will send the GNL to the ANR Business Operations Center. BOC will have the advisor's effort charged to the sponsored project chart string. The salary savings will be allocated to the advisor's Aggie Enterprise faculty project within the fiscal year's task. So this ACR 024 is the task for last fiscal year's allocation, so fiscal year 23-24. And the faculty project, so these funds will be in PPM within the faculty project for the advisor. Okay, so then email notifications will be sent to the advisor when the allocations have been posted to the advisor's faculty project task. And here's just a sample Aggie Enterprise chart string. They would use their faculty project. So typically the faculty project is the same as the GL project, but the first 2 characters is FP for faculty project. And then it's the financial department. They would use their natural account of whatever expense they're using the chart string for. And then they would include the task of the year for the funds that they want to use. So for example, like this fiscal year, 24-25, the task is ACR 025. Okay, next slide. Okay, allowable and unallowable uses for academic salary cost recovery. Fund temporary support staff to assist the ANR academic with research activities or develop and or teach programs. Funds for additional travel, including international training and or professional development activities for advisory. They can purchase computers, printers, cameras, or electronic devices with these funds. And also they can use these funds for program support, supplies, and resources. Unallowable uses for cost recovery funds: entertainment, no alcohol or staff morale functions, personal items, no recognition gifts. And there's the link again. These are state general funds. So you can go to that link to see a list of and get more details on certain types of expenses. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this information is posted to the BOC website. So if you need to want to refer to this information again later after today, you can just go to our website and it's under resource and programs menu, and then to the policies, procedures, and forms link that Elizabeth went through. And then under the policy, procedures, and forms, this information is located under the UCCE funding allocations link. Or you can contact me. Here's my contact information if you have any questions after today. Or also you can check with your BOC business partner on any questions. Yeah, I think that's it.
All right. Okay, so I am going to go over some tools to kind of help you organize the chart of accounts. So CCOA, Common Chart of Accounts. Love acronyms here at ANR. So that's what that stands for. And then we also refer to just chart string. And this is going to be the account string, which, is, 43 numbers or letters. So it can be overwhelming, but I want to kind of help you just kind of understand the segments of breaking it down so it's a little easier to understand. The let me get rid of the pictures. The chart strings, so they're a long combination of accounting information that are used to track expenses and revenue for each campus. Each segment contains a value that relates to a specific element of the chart of accounts, such as fund or financial department. And the bottom kind of shows, we kind of just do the numbers with a hyphen in between. The picture on the left, this comes from a quick guide that will be in the reference section. It's kind of helpful just to kind of explain which each segment represents, as well as how many characters. So you can kind of see sometimes if something's off or what it is based on, how long it is. Entity for UCANR, it's always going to be 3310. Every campus has a different entity. And then fund, that's going to be the pot of money that it's coming from or going to. And then financial department is going to be the code for that department. Natural account will change because that's going to be used based on what type of transaction it is. Revenue, expense, recharge. So we don't need the natural account to be known to send it to the BOC. We'll use a natural account based on what's being purchased or what's happening. So it's okay to not know the natural account or have a filler in there. Purpose, mostly you'll see 44 for research, 62 public service, and 64 for operational maintenance. And that's what the business purpose is relating back to that. And then program would be a 3-character. Sometimes it's just 0, and if any of these, like for program, project, activity, if there is nothing, zeros are fine. So project would be if we're tracking it by project as well, and then activity. So again, you can grab it from the resources, could be handy to have. But next slide. Okay, I'll also go over two tools that can be helpful as well. One's called Segmentor, one's called Finjector, and they are both. You can find them. This ANR Aggie Enterprise webpage. This was a webpage that was created when we were moving over to Aggie Enterprise. Has a lot of resources there, and you can find the links there, and then you can just bookmark them once you get them. All right, next slide. Okay, so Segmentor was developed to facilitate the creation and validation of the CCOA chart strings, which can then be entered into Aggie Enterprise or any of the other boundary applications. While this tool operates independently from Aggie Enterprise system, the values and validation rules used by Segmentor are the same as those in Aggie Enterprise, meaning like it's constantly communicating with Aggie Enterprise to validate. Down below, it just kind of shows you, and I'll do some more examples, but this just shows you what it will look like. And there are some tabs if you want to be looking up a general ledger chart string, a PPM, POET, which would be with the project, and then some other UC Path and other options there too. And off to the right, and just showing here, so when you type in the number, it will show you the description of what that activity or financial department or fund or whatever is. And you can also, if you search by name or description, if that could be helpful if you're looking for something in particular. Like for instance, here I was typing Alameda and then it pops up there. So both ways there, it'll show you the description of the number. It's helpful. So next slide. Okay, so just want to show you what it would look like for a valid chart string and a non-valid. So on the left-hand side, these are numbers I put in off a CCOA I was given, and you hit the validate chart string at the bottom there. And then if you get the check mark, then it's like, okay, that is a valid chart string. And I'll just say that doesn't mean that it's like the right chart string. I mean, you have to kind of understand, which one you're using, but it is a valid chart string. And then on the right-hand side, this one, when I went to validate it, it was an error, get the red X, because the purpose doesn't exist. So I would have to figure out if I typed something wrong or if I need to go back and get a better chart string to use. All right, next slide. Okay, and then I will show you here looking up a project in the PPM. A PPM project chart string. I do like to use the UC Path PPM tab because it will give you fund and purpose and some other helpful information. But in this case, I put in the project in the project box, and then it would populate these other items. The task, so when you put in a task, it will possibly change the fund and some other factors. So just be sure that, you know, if you're changing the task, you're also looking at the other factors. But on the left-hand side, I put in the chart string and validate it, and it's a good chart string. On the right, you can see that it's saying that the task is not good. So I would have to find a different account to use or a task or see if I made an error there. So that's helpful there. All right, next slide. Okay, the other one I want to talk about is Finjector. So this is a tool to help you organize your department's Aggie Enterprise chart strings. And these, in Finjector, the chart strings are placed within a folder by the fiscal officer, and they'll be labeled if they're general ledger chart string or a PPM, project portfolio manager chart string. And you know, these are information's, it's validated through Finjector, but it is put in by the fiscal officer. So the folders are grouped by teams, and then each team, you may have access to different things based on what you're doing business with. If you don't see your department or county, and it could just be that you need access, or if there's an account you can't find, you could reach out to your BOC team. We could give you access, or maybe there's a certain account that you'd want us to enter there for you, but it's kind of a good way to see what the options are for accounts to use. So in the teams, there'll be a UCCE counties team with a folder per county, advisors team, and then one folder per advisor, as well as the admin units have a team, and then there's one folder per department. All right, next slide. So there's just another link to the Finjector, and this is what you would see like when you first went in there. And the next slide. Okay, and this is kind of some of the slides you would see. So again, that same initial teams one, and in this case, you would be clicking into the UCCE counties team, which would then pop up. What you see on the bottom there would be a list of counties or the ones that you need. And then if you went into the county folder, you would see a list of accounts. So these are all you can see how on they're blue for the PPM. I have an example at the bottom of a GL chart string as well. That would be that gold color. And then one more slide to show you what it looks like. So this is an example of once you go into an account, the information you'll see, very helpful. So here, this is a PPM chart string. It's valid. So again, it's checking like the Segmentor, like checking for valid validity with the Aggie Enterprise. And then the bottom sections are going to be all those sections you would need for the chart string, all those characters. And then as well as it's showing you, like for the PPM, there's going to be one project manager assigned. Also the dates are on there. And then also shows the GL chart string and the approver. So if you're using a GL chart string, you're going to see a list of approvers there. And that kind of shows you too who approves for that department. I believe that's it for CCOA.
Okay, so I'm going to briefly go over a statement of cash collections process, or SCCs. So this is the process when your county or department receives either a donation, income, or reimbursement, receives some sort of money, and you need to report that to us at the BOC so we can make sure it gets into the right account. So first one is donations. That's a typical one. Next one is income. Next one is reimbursement. And an example of the SCC form is just to the right here. Each county or department does have their own numbering convention just for tracking purposes. And that is going to be in the top right section, right under where it says statement of cash collections. You'll want to make sure all of this information is filled out along with the account numbers. One thing that changes is a natural account, depending on the type of SCC that you're submitting. These are the natural account numbers for, we have one for gifts or donations, one for miscellaneous fee income, one for just other miscellaneous income. And then for the reimbursements, those are the two that we would see most often, just reimbursement of supplies and materials or reimbursement of travel. And then you'll just make sure to sign that and have the county director sign that form. And then I'm going to go over some of the other things that are required for certain types of SCCs. Next slide. So for donation SCCs, these are all, most all of the forms that are required that we gather and compile and send to development. So of course we do need the SCC form. We also need a tender of gift form. We do need a picture copy of the check with the routing number redacted. We need the deposit receipt. We do need a 700U form if it is for a specific research project or specific PI. So this is not always needed. We do need to submit a UDEV if it is $5,000 or over. We at BOC handle this step. And we also need a various donors sheet, only if applicable, if you're sending in multiple donations on one SCC. We'll also need an acceptance letter. I'm going to have some examples of some of these forms on the next slides just so you can see what they look like. The acceptance letter can be generated and signed by the county director if it is under $20,000. If it is $20,000 or over, development generates and signs the acceptance letter. They also will do this if the donation is specifically for the county director. They cannot generate or sign the acceptance letter themselves. That's something development will do. And again, BOC, we will handle this step directly with development. And then on the next slide, I just have a picture of what that 700U form looks like. Again, that is just sent in if the donation is for a specific research project or PI. And then on the right-hand side, that is an example of what the UDEV form looks like. Again, that's something we at the BOC work with development on, so you don't need to worry about sending that in for anything that's 5,000 or over. And then on the next slide, I have an acceptance letter template. It's important that the acceptance letter is on UC ANR letterhead, and we've got that tax wording info at the bottom. And it does need to say to thank you and officially accept your gift of the amount, the date it was received, and what it is in support of. There's an example, a Word document in the resources section that you'll receive that includes this acceptance letter template, so you can always use that. And then to the right is an example of what the tender of gift form looks like. And then just a quickly note for donations, if you have an in-kind donation, so it's not a monetary donation, but a donation of an item, you do have to make sure that there is a value assigned to that item, and then you do still submit all the same forms. It's processed in a similar way, even if it's not a monetary donation. And then next slide, this is just what's required when you're submitting for income or reimbursement. SCC form, of course, we do need the deposit slip, deposit receipt, a cash or check log if applicable, and then pictures of the check or checks with the routing numbers redacted, and then you'll submit that packet to the BOC team for processing. One last item that I want to mention is if you are sending in a packet to the BOC for SCCs, please send in just one packet per type of SCC. So we cannot have a donation and income on the same SCC. If you have multiple, please just submit one for donation, one for income, one for reimbursement. Don't combine different types on the same SCC form. You can have multiple incomes on one SCC. You can have multiple donations on one SCC, multiple reimbursements. We just don't want to combine the types. And of course, if any questions about this process, please do leave those in the Q&A and we will get to those. Thank you.
All right, so buying a cell phone for ANR use. Next slide. So, what constitutes the need for a cell phone? So if you need it for travel or work location, emergency responses, or if an employee is required to have it for their department, by their department. So there's got to be a need for having it. And so it needs to be approved by your director and supervisor. Next slide. Who approves the cell phone purchase? So county employees need to have approval by their county director. Admin employees need to have approval from their department director, and directors need to have approval from an AVP. The G46 needs to be filled out for all cell phone purchases. The exception is academics and CES employees. There is two portions of a G46, and so the eligibility form having to have approval is only got to be done, does not need to be done for academic and CES employees, but the portion about having a cell phone does need to be done by everybody in that, so that we can have record of who has those phones. Next slide. You have two ANR approved providers. We have Verizon, which ANR manages, and there's discounted cell phones and plans that run about $70 a month, and the billing is manually processed through P-card and AggieExpense reconciliation, and the device ships to you within about 2 days. There's also AT&T, which is managed by the UC Davis campus, discounted cell phones, and the plans run $60 to $70 a month. The billing is done through a recharge by Davis campus, and the device ships to you within a few days once campus processes it. So it takes a little bit longer. Next slide. So so again, there's the G46 eligibility form that has to be filled out for those that are required. And then there's the agreement form, which is filled out by everybody and must be submitted to the BOC or to those that are, if you're with, that has to be filled out and sent in. A purchase request has to be filled out, indicating the full chart string to, that needs to be billed for your monthly service, your preferred area code, the shipping address, and the model of the device of phone you want. You cannot get the newest model. And your preference of color of phone, although we don't guarantee that that's the one you're going to get, because if it's a popular color, we can't promise anything. And then submit that to your business partner team. Also, if you need accessories like a cell phone case or you want an extra charger, don't submit that on that request. You would submit that on a separate request, and that's going to be or you'd purchase that through the punch out through Amazon or whatever. We're not going to purchase that directly through Verizon or AT&T. Next steps, or next slide, I'm sorry. Okay, the G46 agreement. So this is a policy that is required. And again, this is so that we keep record of who has them, because these phones are university equipment. And so these are for university use and not to be used for personal use. And so if you are to leave ANR, you are to return that phone to ANR. And so you would return it to your unit, and then it gets turned off and it should be returned back. You can return it to the BOC and we would turn it into IT. If you need an upgrade, your phone could be turned in towards an upgrade, but if it's not, or it's not worth anything, it's not yours to give away, you still need to return it back to IT, and they will take care of getting rid of it. Again, it should not be used for personal use. The IRS defines that then as an employee benefit, and it could be counted as income. Again, that's why we have you fill out that G46. Next slide. Tablets and MiFis. Tablets and MiFis are also considered something that requires a G46. And so if you are getting a tablet or a MiFi, we also need that form filled out. And if your tablet is going to have cellular service, we also need that to be managed. And that potentially also needs to have both G46 forms filled out. And then we'd also have to have a service provider filled out on that one as well. You can reach out to your BOC team for help with purchasing those as well. And those also have to be managed. And if your tablet is going to have cellular service, that also requires the same level of approval as a cell phone. And those are also considered university equipment and must be returned and managed. MiFis are also your responsibility. And so you do need to make sure you're monitoring them and making sure you're keeping them secure. All devices without a service on it should be purchased through the punch out catalog in Aggie Enterprise. And then you would attach your G46 agreement to your requisition. And we should always be watching for the lowest price product available for that approval justification. Next slide. Again, if you're leaving ANR, it's your responsibility to turn over that phone or equipment to your county office, or you can send it into the BOC upon separation and we will get it to IT. If you choose that you want to keep your phone number and take that on that financial responsibility, you need to reach out to your BOC business partner team. And so we can help arrange for that transition to get that phone number switched over into your financial responsibility. Next slide. Okay. So we are actually at 11:30. However, we will give you guys a few minutes for some question and answers. Does anybody, there's nothing currently in Q&A, but does anybody have any questions? You can either raise your hand or just speak up. Okay. If not, we will email everybody some of the resources that we've talked about, so you'll have them. Oh, Heather?
Shauna LaBrash had mentioned, is there a way that we can delete entries in WFA if we entered them by mistake or if they were rejected?
And there, unfortunately, there is not.
No.
That was one of the first questions I had when I first started, and there is not.
Oh, and actually, and I had asked if maybe it was about punch out, but it wasn't. But could you mention real quick about like if you do a punch out order, you can't alter it?
Yes, if
I
you
get it press right?
yes, if you do a punch out order, you cannot amend it. So like if you decide you placed a punch out order for 5 and now you want 6, you can't go into that requisition and do a change order for 1, adding 1. You need to just go out and place another punch out order.
And I think you mentioned too, which I'll just share with everybody too. I think you said oftentimes when a punch out rejects, it's usually because the chart string was entered incorrectly.
Correct.
So I'll just throw that out there too. Yeah, okay.
Okay, so we will get everybody emailed the resources that we've talked about and a copy of the PowerPoint just so you have it. We hope this was helpful. This was our first time, so if anybody has any feedback for us, we would love it because we're living and learning. But we thank you guys for giving us 2 hours, and as you get new employees, please have them join in. Thank you, everybody.
You all.
Hey, Elizabeth.
Hey.
Do you have a list of all the attendees or that you can send me, or are you gonna send the stuff out to everybody?
I can send you the emails. I can also draft something with links.
That would be great.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.